President Clinton and the Democratic Party just set up Trump, J.D. Vance, and Elon for the perfect storm. Well, I did some digging in history and found something that might just surprise you. As you've heard, there's nothing new under the sun. And what I'm about to reveal could open up your eyes to what is exactly happening in today's 2025. Stay tuned, we're about to get into it. Welcome back. But what I was trying to say is, this is related to what we have customarily said is the blackest president that we've ever had. Sorry, Obama. But yes, President Clinton, 1993. Have you ever heard of something called National Performance Review? If you haven't, that's okay. Neither had I. But as I was scouring through Twitter and people started sharing some information, I went to digging and my curiosity got the best of me. And so that's what we're going to be sharing today. Well, in 1993, President Clinton and Vice President Gore hired Elaine Kamarck to run the National Performance Review. This project was a result of a 1992 campaign promise by then candidate Bill Clinton to quote unquote reinvent government. Does it sound familiar? I actually have here, this is the testimony that she gave in 2013 about what took place during that time. So when I compare President Clinton, National Performance Review, hiring this lady, Elaine Kamarck, to President Trump, 2025, hiring Elon Musk, creating Doge, I see a lot of similarities. So let's dig a little bit further. President Clinton made several statements about reducing the size of government and eliminating federal jobs. So this was actually a statement made by then President Clinton. It says, I promise to cut the workforce, and that's what I'm doing. Through our efforts, we've already cut the workforce by 102,000 positions, and we're on track to cut it by a total of 272,000 positions, bringing it to the smallest size since John Kennedy was president. Does that sound familiar to some of us out here? I'm going to keep going. We've closed nearly 2,000 obsolete field offices and eliminated 250 programs and agencies like the Tasters Board, the Bureau of Mines, and the wool and mohair subsidies. Again, I'm seeing some contrasting things here to what's being said right now. In fact, let me pull up on my PC. The fact sheet by the current administration says that they want to reform the federal workforce to better serve Americans, and they want to shrink the size of workforce, limit hiring to essential positions, and significantly reduce the size of government. Okay, so far so pretty consistent across the board. It says, we cut the government right away by eliminating what wasn't needed, bloated headquarters, layers of managers, outdated field offices, obsolete red tapes and rules. Clinton also emphasized the importance of making these cuts responsibly. Well, we already know that Musk and Doge have already shut down the USAID. They've cut the Department of Education. They've removed all the DEI programs as well, not to mention canceling over $420 million of DEI and unoccupied building leases, according to the Doge tracker. In this particular testimony, Elaine herself admits at the end, again, this was 2013, at the time, however, it was needed a new burst of creativity. It says we face two challenges: budget deficits are at all-time highs and the trust deficit of the American people is at all-time lows. So I just wanted to say that because this was the testimony that she gave going back to this time frame where she was then Elon Musk's position and Doge was then National Performance Review. But let's keep going to some of the things that was said in the time frame in that era. Mr. Clinton stated, while committed to cutting the workforce, we want to do it in a humane way. We face the same dilemma that confronted many private corporations that needed to downsize, but wanted to find or avoid firing large numbers of loyal employees. Regarding the buyout program, Clinton stated, our buyout program has been a huge success and achieved what we hoped to help us cut the workforce in a fiscally responsible and humane way. Wait. What? Buyout program? He had a buyout program too? So Trump didn't make up the buyout? Hold on. Wait. I got my notes. It says here, and by the way, just for reference, this comes from the American Presidency Project, dated 1995. And it says that early last year, Congress approved my request to allow non-defense agencies to offer buyouts up to $25,000 a person. The Department of Defense and a few other agencies already could offer buyouts under existing law. because normal attrition will help us downsize the future. We offer buyouts only until March 31st, 1995, which was last Friday. So they were offering a buyout program. They wanted to reduce the federal workforce. They offered them $25,000 a person to leave. And right now, as of this recording, about 75,000 federal employees have accepted President Trump's buyout offer, which closed applicants on Wednesday. The final buyout tally comes after a federal judge lifted a pause on the program earlier today. The figure confirmed by the Office of Personnel Management represents about 3% of federal government's 2.3 million workers. That's below the White House projection of 5 to 10% of the workforce who are expected to accept buyouts. Now, this is important. Stay with me here. It says, contrast that to Clinton. By the end of the Clinton term, they reduced the federal workforce by 426,000 between January 1993 and September 2000. So at this moment, given the current buyouts, we've only reduced the workforce by 75,000, where under the Clinton administration, which again, everyone's favorite president at that time during that era, I mean, we talked about how great life was during those times where we had, two-family households, where we didn't have to, both parents didn't have to work and never had a middle class. But again, they reduced 400,000 people at that time. 400,000. So during President Clinton's, several agencies and programs were also eliminated or consolidated as part of his efforts to reduce the size of government. So he eliminated agencies and programs. So this is not new? Come on. Why are people not telling me this? Why are we allowing people to get upset and mad about things that have already happened in the past, like these things are something that has never occurred before, and so it's some strange phenomenon, like an alien that we've never seen? We've done this before. The problem is that we are not teaching history. We don't know history, so we have no idea of what's happened in the past. And in fact, we don't even know what things might have benefited us that people have done to help us to get to where we're at. But instead, we're complaining because we think that people are taking things away from us instead of giving us opportunities. Watch this. I'm gonna tie this in together. I spent a lot of time researching this stuff and going through it. And I know I'm going to get the smoke, but that's okay. Because I have the education now, and you can't take that away from me. And you're going to have the education. And now that you've listened this far and I planted the seed, they can't take this away from you either. Regardless of how you feel about it, internalize it, you will know the facts, because I have not seen this anywhere on any news stations. During President Clinton's presidency, several agencies and programs were eliminated. The key eliminations include independent foreign policy agencies. Doesn't that sound like what we're doing now? U.S. Information Agency, Arms Control and Disarmament Agency. These agencies were eliminated and their functions merged to the State Department as part of the Foreign Affairs Reform and Restructuring Act. 35 major military installations were closed, including 7 large bases in California. 95 smaller military installations were shut down. 840 overseas military bases were closed between 1990 and 1993, representing almost a 50% reduction. So when people are saying that these things can't be done, we've already done them, and we've proven that it can be done before. So it's not like this is not some new phenomenon. We went over some of the programs like Tea Tasters, Bureau of Mines, Wool and Monair. Welfare reform. The Aid to Families with Dependent Children, AFDC program, was replaced with Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, TAMF, program through the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Act of 1996. Other reductions, nearly 2,000 obsolete field offices were closed. 250 programs and agencies were eliminated in total through specific names, for most are not provided in the search results. It's worth noting that while the U.S. Agency for International Development was not eliminated, there were proposals to merge it into the State Department. However, this plan was not fully implemented, though USAID was placed under the authority of Secretary of State. So let's go back to, again, the statements made on the current administration. It says that reducing the unnecessary footprint of government, there are too many federal employees, excluding active duty military, postal service workers, okay, excluding them, right? And no one knows exactly how many federal agencies exist, but the register lists over 400. The workforce contributes to federal debt spending, nearly $300 billion in compensation for civilian employees, excluding pensions. So, this is not easy for me to read it. It's not easy for me to understand it. But it looks like someone that's smarter than me, that has more information than me, was able to learn from the history of our past. Now, why does this matter? Why is this important? You know what? And I'm going to skip the other stuff. I'm going to get to the bottom line of this, because in case you decide to turn off me because your blood's boiling and you're frustrated, I just want to get to the bottom line, because you've stayed with me this far. We all know how this ended up, right? Clinton's achievements marked the first budget surpluses since 1969, ending a long period of deficit spending. The fiscal turnaround was significant considering the $290 billion deficit Clinton inherited when he took office in '93. It's worth noting that while Clinton played a crucial role, the balanced budget resulted from a combination of factors, including economic conditions, policy decisions, and bipartisan efforts in Congress. Surplus allows for some reduction of national debt, though the debt was not entirely eliminated. Now, I say that for the people that don't want to stay, but I'm going to keep going on with the talk, because I want you to have that information. So in case you just decide to turn off because you're frustrated and you're like, you don't care because of the people in office or the people behind it. And so getting the final results that serve and benefit all of us doesn't matter to you. That's okay. I completely understand that. But at least you have another opinion and another side of the story, so that if it doesn't turn out the way that you anticipated, or it turns out, different than what you're thinking, you can attribute that to having more knowledge and more information. And you could also probably be less angry or upset about the things that are happening, because we don't know that what's happened since that time frame where we were at a budget surplus till now, how much more expanded areas are hurting us, because neither you nor myself sit in Congress or sit in the Senate. And so we don't really see what these people are doing. All that we do know, and we all agree on, is how do people who make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year end up with multi-million-dollar portfolios on government salaries. We all agree that that's a little bit fishy. We don't know how they did it because we're not sitting in those positions. So all I'm saying is be patient, right? Not be less angry, and here's some information that you can do some research on to find out if, in fact, or what could potentially be the outcome if this all kind of pans out, right? It doesn't have to all be doom and gloom. We don't have to leave America, but we can now digest it and interpret it in a different lens so that we can have some calmness, peace, serenity about our day. Because at the end of the day, my favorite motivational speaker, Jim Rohn, says that you can't blame your surroundings, you can't blame the politicians, you can't blame the people in office. Only you get to control how you feel, how you act, the decisions that you make, right? And so no one is standing in the way of your prosperity, your growth. Only you're doing that. So I just want to bring some calm to some people out here who, amidst all the turmoil of all the craziness that they're seeing on the news, the things that they're not projecting. As you know, I've always been an advocate for making a positive channel, even though that doesn't get a lot of reviews and it doesn't get me to millions of followers. I've always wanted to be the voice of reason so that we can help people not be so scared and not be so afraid to take chances and to move forward. Now, let me get back to the storytelling. So I see, again, a lot of things listed in Doge Playbook are verbatim to National Performance Review, Clinton Gore Playbook. Even so, where I kind of, in a weird way, I kind of like the name of this person, Elaine Kamarski, because Elaine Kamark, you could kind of like play words and get it like Elon Musk out of Elaine Kamark if you just move some letters around. So it's kind of, I like that because, she's got several of his letters, both in the first name and last name, that are similar. In 1998, the vice president asked leaders of 32 high-impact agencies to develop a handful of measurable goals that could be achieved over the next 3 years. These agencies would have the most interaction with the public and business, constituting 90% of federal government's contact with the public, about 1.1 million of the federal government's 1.8 million civilian employees. So we were at 1.8 million employees before. So we could get back down to under 2 million employees. And so the National Public Review helped the agency set and meet stretch goals, customer service goals, built on the government performance and results action plans. They included the IRS, FDA, and Social Security Administration. Aren't these the same agencies that we're talking about now that are needing reform? These are the same agencies. I know that everybody talked about, we see, Robert Kennedy Jr., RFK, he's on there talking about FDA. Elon Musk is over meddling in the IRS and the Social Security Administration. Why is that we're talking about the same three agencies back in 93 that we're talking about in 2025? Because we know that, again, your health is your wealth, and the FDA, right? We know that they're allowing the corporations to put red dye 40 and high fructose corn syrup and everything. We know that they're also responsible for incentivizing people to not ship those crops over so that we can keep it here and they can continue to poison America. We know that the number one reason why Americans go bankrupt is because of healthcare. So we know this. We know that there's massive abuse of our systems. And even in this report, they talk about the abuse and the waste that's happening. But none of us sitting home, right, in the comforts of our air-conditioned resident, where we get our Uber Eats, our DoorDashes, where we get to look on Yelp to just choose the restaurant we want to go to. We get to be in a vacation destination. None of us are sitting here worried about this stuff. We're just allowing it to happen with no kind of a sense of free-spirited and just basically, while there's several smart people out here working on our behalf to try to solve these problems, the rest of us, we're scrolling through TikTok, watching YouTube, commenting on Facebook and Instagram, and going on living our hunky-dory lives, buying the next car, the next house, right? Going on the next vacation. No, I applaud anyone who wants to take up the reins and try to fix these problems. Similar to the people that go out and fight on our behalf, protect us while we get to sleep. All of our veterans are out there doing the work that most of us Americans don't want to do, can't do, or we've chosen not to do it because these people are the ones that are allowing us to have the comforts, to have the rest, to have the peace of mind, knowing that we're protected and our freedoms are protected as well. So let's keep going. Let's not stop there. After the first report on 99.3, President Clinton began signing a series of government-wide executive orders to implement various recommendations to the report. The second executive order he signed was setting customer service standards. The first was to cut red tape. The new executive order required all federal agencies to identify their customers and survey to them to determine the kind and quality of services they want and their level of satisfaction with existing services within 6 months. So he signed a whole bunch of executive orders mandating agencies to make corrections to serve the public better. Okay, again, nothing new under the sun. We just never played or we just were never this involved as much in politics, so we didn't know about this stuff, or we've never seen it, or we never cared this much because somehow it didn't mean anything to us. It didn't affect us in some capacity. So why did they do all this, you might ask? The reason the president and vice president felt so strongly about this was a concern that Americans' trust in the federal government had fallen dramatically, and they believed that restoring trust was important to a vital democracy. What shocks me the most was that in the era of America First, but before that, it was called the message of putting customers first, was conveyed to the rank and file staff across government using a wide range of methods. So, which by Clinton's definition was Americans. So they called it putting customers first, but America was the customers. What's kind of funny is that so many people complain that I know about inefficiencies in government. And we know that the people that we know of, all of us have people that we know that work in government that do great jobs. They're hardworking people, but we also know people that are just getting by and they're not giving their best and their all. And we see that, but we don't say anything because we somehow believe that the money is infinite and that it won't run out, or that that burden doesn't fall upon you to fix those things. And so, Mr. Clinton back then, or President Clinton, he said that. That was some of the things that he said early on, was that it says that the buyouts were not offered in a random fashion. We targeted them to reduce the layers of bureaucracy and micromanagement that were tying government in knots. We made sure that departments and agencies tied their buyout strategies to overall plans to streamline their bureaucracies. As a result, almost 70% of our buyouts in the non-defense agencies have gone to people at higher grade levels, such as managers. And so it's just interesting to me because it says, for too long in Washington, we've had too many layers of bureaucracy, too many workers whose main job was to check on the work of other workers rather than to perform useful work themselves. And so it's just interesting to me because It says, for too long in Washington, we've had too many layers of bureaucracy, too many workers whose main job was to check on the work of other workers rather than to perform useful work themselves. As you see, got lots of notes, lots of paper here. And thanks for staying this far. We're going to wrap this thing up. But I want to bring up a couple points here. What's funny? Let's go to the point, and then I'll get back to the funny part. So, interesting enough, if you remember on my show earlier last year, we had on Jackie Robinson from the SBA, and her job that was to eliminate the overlap in the SBA program. And so for the 8A woman-owned, veteran-owned programs, you had to go apply to different platforms. And previously, the veterans-owned program was in another office, and it wasn't even under the coverage of the SBA. Then it got shifted under the SBA, and then you still had 3 different places to go apply, and then you had to give overlapping information. And that was not helping small businesses. And so under that previous administration, they basically took and consolidated these programs so that you can have one application process for all small businesses now in one portal, and then you could reduce the amount of information that you had to give to all these different places. So that was an example of where the government was used in a positive way, but it was also an example of how so many years we have been doing things inefficiently and there was room for improvement. And so when I look at what they're saying is, we're not saying to take away, that did not take away from any of the programs. What it did do, though, is it allowed it to be more efficient for us small businesses to be able to serve us better, also to reduce the amount of people that needed to process these things, because now, right, you got one portal, you've got less people. And so that was a function to me of technology execution and implementation, as opposed to having people and bodies sitting there and reviewing these things. So again, we're now in a new era where I am very well aware that many of the, not just government, but banking institutions are using software and that's outdated, that's no longer being used in the current environment. And so just saying with some using the new technology that we have currently, that is like everyday stuff, they were able to help pass that benefit on to small businesses. So everything that's being done is not to harm us. I just want to say that, because I think that that's always the assumed presumption. When we hear these things, we assume everything is being done to harm us and not to help or benefit us anyway. And so that's just a way of looking at things. But interesting enough, what I thought was funny was that the Hammer, so NPR team, they created this Hammer Award for those federal employees who did exactly what the public thought they couldn't do, which is tear down something that wasn't working and build something better. So kind of what I gave you an example of. And so the Hammer Award consisted of a cheap hammer tied with a ribbon mounted on blue. We'll pull this up on the screen here. Sorry, over here. Let's pull this Hammer Award. That contained a card from the Vice President Al Gore that read, "Thanks for creating a government that works better and costs less." The third program that was designed to facilitate innovation was the formation of a National Partnership Council. It was called Access America, re-engineered through information technology in the age when less than 25% of the public was online. It summarized what was to come. Again, reminds me of the current administration's push on AI. And so while we know that everything from that time and that era was not positive, like the war on drugs, there are still mimicking those things. Like under the current administration, they've got Make America Safe Again. So we know what the outcome is of that. I don't have to go into that video. You can see that somewhere else. But what's remarkable to me is that how many people lived during that era. We're not talking about, I lived there, but I was a little kid. But how many people that are, I guess the boomer generation that lived in this era, that saw this happen, and they are pretending like this didn't happen, or they're not aware of it, and they're not sharing enough insight to us so that we can, we could be made aware at the very least, and we could make our own decisions about how we want to feel about the situation. So, in final thoughts, in a testimony that Elaine sums up some final thoughts, again, this is a 2013 article. It says, "It's been 20 years since there's been a major reform undertaken by the U.S. federal government. That's no one's fault. The Bush administration had to cope with unprecedented attack on American soil and a subsequent war. The Obama administration had to cope with an economic emergency unparalleled since the Great Depression. Now they can be blamed for not making government reform a central focus. It's been 20 years since there's been an across-the-board analysis of government reform. Much of what we did back in the Clinton administration is standard operating procedure now in government. It is time, however, for a new burst of creativity. We face two challenges: budget deficits are at all-time highs, and the trust deficit of the American people is at all-time lows. A serious bipartisan reform effort could do wonders for both deficits. And again, for those of you, it says, at the end of the day, Clinton achievements mark the first budget surplus since 1969, and the turnaround considering a $290 billion deficit that he inherited when he took office. And he played a crucial role. The balanced budget resulted from a combination of factors, but they had a surplus which allowed some reduction of our national deficit. So again, I know that 50% of you don't like the current administration. I get it. But I'm making a plea to all of my intelligent people who can carry two opposing thoughts in their head, is to just, in the face of all this looming uncertainty, have a greater perspective on what potentially could happen and what's possible, and also find a way how you can get involved and you can help, because sitting on the sideline and complaining is not a solution. Get involved and figure out how you can help the administration. What can you do to offer up suggestions, knowing that this is where they want to go, right? So for us, particularly here at our organization, GovCon Giants, we're going to be very proud to support all of the sweeping changes. And so part of what we're doing for our conferences and this year, and our themes for all the events we're doing, is how are you going to operate and succeed in this American First era? And so that's what we're going to be talking about at all of the things that we're doing, the events we're attending, all the functions that we're participating in, is how do small businesses, particularly because that's our focus is small and medium-sized businesses, how do we help them operate and succeed in this era? And so I'm going to be looking back at history and what people did in order to be effective. And I'm going to be coming to you guys and tell you some of those strategies that I've learned. But again, I'm going to have all the show notes from everything that I've read, all of these reports, and all these documents that I read. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much. If you have someone who's struggling with this particular subject matter, share this with them, because I think it's important for them to know that there is hope, that there is a possibility of a better future, and that necessarily everything that they see that happens to them as bad at first may at some point turn out to work out and be a benefit to them, even though it may not seem that way when you first look at it. So thanks so much. I enjoy you guys. I enjoy having this conversation. Let me know your feedback in the comments below.